Today we're talking about Castlevania.
This game was your pick.
My pick. Yep, made by Konami in 1987, same as Contra, funnily enough.
Yeah, that was coincidence.
Yeah, not really. Konami just a powerhouse in the late 80s on the NES.
They were so good back then.
They were a really good game developer. So yeah, basically the story is very limited in this game. You basically play hero Simon Belmont, or in the credits of the game, Simon Belmondo. I'm not sure the story to whether that was a joke or whether it was a mistranslation or what. And you've arrived at Castlevania and you've got to kill the evil count, which is a non-copyright infringing version of Dracula, I guess. And yeah, that's literally the story.
Yeah, there's like nothing to it. It basically just says there's enemies in the castle and then you'll meet the count. Like, it's very, very limited.
Yeah.
So obviously you love this game.
I do love this game.
You've already played it.
I had finished it before, but I'd pretty much forgotten the majority of everything after like stage 3 basically of the game. I do love this game. It's definitely frustrating for sure. It's definitely a hard game at times, but I still overall very like it.
Yeah, there were definitely parts where I was getting pretty frustrated.
Yeah, especially at the end, but both were getting exceptionally salty.
Against the final boss.
Very, very salty.
But there's usually a way to deal with everything in this game.
Yeah.
Really. I don't know. When I first started playing this game, there was a lot of frustrating mechanics to me.
Yep.
But then, like, rewatching our footage, I found myself thinking we could have easily dealt with getting hit there.
Yep.
Or whatever. So I've sort of changed my stance. I do think this is a good game.
But you may have regressed a little bit just based on the last boss, maybe? Or have you...
No, I think I feel like overall this is a decent, and like the way you put it, it's more of a puzzle platformer because it's a lot slower paced than your average platformer. So it's more, they give you trickier enemies to deal with.
Yep.
And you've just got to figure out the best way to combat that.
There is some reactions that you need to do, but generally it's more of a slow and purposeful game, I find anyway.
Yeah.
Simon's movements and general control is very strange to any other game that I've ever played. It's very unique. In the way that it's slow, falling is almost instantaneous, like frame instant.
That's such a weird thing.
Weird.
Very strange.
Really weird. I think, it doesn't even make sense that that's to punish you for, like falling off edges or whatever, because you can't control your momentum in the air anyway.
Yeah.
So if you are going into a hole, it's inevitable. So having that really fast fall doesn't really make sense.
Maybe they were just like, oh, you're going to die anyway, so better make it fast.
Yeah, I don't know. Don't know. It's a very strange thing, and I think you found it very, very weird the first time you played it, when you'd fall off edges or whatever and you'd just be like straight to the ground.
Just instant death, it's so quick.
Yeah. super punishing in that sense.
Weird.
So yeah, even the environments and the enemies together make it more of a puzzle as well. So it's not just the enemies themselves, it's the environment and the items that you obtain as well.
They do a good job, I think, and I feel like when we played this, we didn't use them enough. The items we should have been using them more often.
Yeah.
They just and there's so many hearts. Like, the game gives us a lot of hearts to use, and we just never really utilize them that much.
It's very easy to be super, and I think that's something we've developed later in gaming as well, as being super hesitant to use your items when you have a limited resource. You just want to hold on to that for a situation when you think you can't deal with something. Mm-hmm. So we would rather
just not use them at all.
Not use them and try and get by without them. Yeah. So we have them for when we really need them. But the objective of the game is probably we should have just used them when we need, like in the instance when we did need them, even if it wasn't dire. But yeah, the items definitely help and are necessary to progressing. Not only in the bosses, but also like just enemies and dealing with levels and stuff.
Yeah. And like what you were mentioning with the bosses, there's often a specific item that just cripples. Like each specific boss has a different item except for the dagger.
Yeah.
The dagger's
It
almost...
might be good against something, we didn't use it against bosses because yuck.
Usually it's the holy water, but the boomerang is super good as well.
Super good, yeah. Especially with the there's a item in the game as well that multiplies your item usage, and that mixed with the boomerang, you can just put out so much hurt. Yeah. It's just like, but yeah, the direct counter to bosses thing, I actually don't like too much.
What do you mean?
Like having an item that pretty much nullifies bosses.
Yeah. That said, us playing through it casually, that wasn't a big factor. We still struggled against...
Because you have to learn it. If you played this with a walkthrough, it's not the way to play this game at all.
Mm-hmm.
If you play this with a walkthrough, because everything essentially has a counter and is a puzzle, it's like playing a puzzle game with a walkthrough. You're literally not playing the game, essentially, at that point.
Yeah.
So I think that if you are going to play Castlevania, don't look at a walkthrough for the most part. In modern days, people don't have the patience for really frustrating stuff. If you get stuck like crazy, then obviously just to get to the next part or whatever, do whatever you want. But it just doesn't seem designed for that sort of gameplay where you automatically know what you got to do.
Yeah.
Because it goes from being difficult and challenging to being trivial very quickly once you learn the patterns and all that. In with the puzzle gameplay as well, learning patterns is very important in this game.
There's a lot of learning patterns.
And trial and error, but
understanding the movement, because each enemy has its own unique movement. Yeah, really, the way it moves, the way it reacts to your movement
and your positioning as well.
Yeah. And you got to get used to dealing with that. Like the Gorgon heads, for example, like that will spawn at a certain point of where your height is on the screen, and then they'll just do this wavy motion. And to start with, it's brutal to deal with them until you understand what's actually happening.
And that's crazy, because the first time I played that, I didn't even pick that up at all, because I guess I just don't pay attention. I obviously subconsciously worked out how to get by them, but I did not work out that pattern. So, like, the fact that they spawn in front of you, turning back around and spawning them behind you is really not good for you, because then you've got to deal with multiple directions, and then jumping with that as well changes their height. Yeah. So adding all of that elements, if you understand what's going on, you can deal with them pretty easily. Very easily, yeah. Even though they're considered one of the more annoying. Yeah. Especially in that room that has the Medusa heads and the knights that you have to deal at the same time. It's notoriously one of the harder spots in the game. And then with a bit of trial and error, we finally figured out. You finally figured out that it was literally trivialised. Like the Medusa heads played no real role in the fight. They were just creating certain spots that you had to stand in. Yeah, yeah. But based on your movement, you could totally negate whatever they did and just focus on the knights. Just as long as you dodge the Medusa. As long as you had the boomerang. If you had to kill them with the whip, I'm sure that would be a different story. Yeah, but I think it'd just be more to take in. I don't think it'd be particularly hard. Yeah. Because you can just move out of the way of the Medusas. It's the back and forth movement that'll wreck you. Yeah. Because you end up spawning them behind you. That's a bad time. Yeah, varied enemy design as well, and the way that they attack you. They all have relatively consistent patterns. Some have random reactions, probably based on where you are and how you're moving. Most of them are consistent and able to deal with, like the fleas will usually jump at you. Yeah, see, I never picked that up until I saw that you were doing a jump swing every time a flea would come near me. Yeah, because he would jump before he attacks you, or jumps into you essentially. So if you jump and whip him, it makes it a lot easier. Yeah. And there's a lot of those sort of little tricks that you can do to deal with certain enemies in the game. One thing we haven't mentioned with the controls is the stairs.
There's like some parts because you press up to snap to a stair to the stairs if you want to go up, and you press down if you want to snap going down. You can't just walk onto them; you'll fall through them.
Yep. So if you walk in the direction of the stairs and not snap to the stairs, if it's below you, then you'll just fall into the hole eventually, which is ridiculous.
And another thing is because it's up to go up in stairs. If you want to use your item at the same time, you can't. You'll just snap to the stairs instead. So there's a couple of situations where...
I believe you can use it when you're on the stair. The problem is it takes that first input and makes you go on the stairs instead of using the item. So you can go onto the stairs and then use the item, but it does interrupt that flow for sure. And it's a terrible, terrible design choice.
If you don't consciously know aware of the stairs being there while you're fighting the enemy, then that can, a couple of times, that we copped damage from that.
Absolutely. And that's exceptionally frustrating as well. And to be fair to Konami as well, that's more a limitation of the controller. Like, there's only so many buttons. Up and a button is like a pretty standard combination. It's just the fact that they also went with that stair mechanic as well.
Yeah. They could have had... I guess they couldn't have had down and B, because then you would crouch every time you want to use an item, so...
And plus you could snap down in stairs as well. Obviously obviously less frequent than up snapping, but it could still happen.
Yeah.
Going on from stairs, I guess we can go into the actual platforming elements and the enemy knockback. So the way Simon works, when he's hit by anything, he flies back from the direction that he's facing.
Yeah.
So obviously, like, you can manipulate that and like turn around just as you're getting hit, and you can actually get knocked forward. But a lot of platforming around that, you take damage and get knocked straight back into a hole. You can be full health and just get knocked to oblivion.
There's a lot of stages that have that sort of setup. Well, they'll just as you do the jump, an enemy will appear and hit you and knock you into the hole.
I think that's not too frequent, but when it happens, it's really annoying.
Yeah.
Because I don't remember much else than the crows and the fishmen and the bats in the cave, in the fishmen cave. Probably my least favourite level in the game. There's a lot of that hazardous platforming that I don't like.
Yeah.
And that instantaneous spawning and knocking you off into hazards is really frustrating as well in that sense. But I don't think, other than that it happens too often that it penalises you in that.
Yeah, it wouldn't be a big part of...
Like, even in the later level with the eagles, I think that would be truly hazardous, but we actually didn't really have a problem with that, because we figured out fairly quickly that if you just dodge them, you can just run past most of their attacks and not get knocked down. Like last level before the count. I think if you stood around and tried to fight every eagle, you would just get obliterated, and constantly you would take so much damage.
And that's what we tried at the start. We were just like, this isn't worth the amount of damage that we're taking.
Yeah,
we'll just try and get past them.
And it worked fine.
It was easy, once you understand the patterns.
Yeah, you can just dodge through. I think I used the clock once or twice, which is pretty cheesy, but... there's a lot of cheese in this game as well.
Yeah, there is,
Yeah, the bosses, I think are really fun, but again, can be pretty easily countered. So something that can be a challenging, interesting boss, you can just like holy water it to death or whatever.
Yeah. And you can just watch any speedrun how trivial they make the bosses in this game. Like, we spent a while trying to beat the final boss.
A long time. And like I said before, we got super salty. Even though the final boss can be cheesed with holy water, it was still exceptionally frustrating.
Difficult. And then we're like, well, let's have a look and see how the speedrunners do it. And they just turned, like, the fight was maybe 5 seconds long. It just decimated the final boss. So when you know what you're doing and you have the skills for it,
that's it.
Then none of the bosses in this game are a challenge at all.
Which I think that's good game design. If you're good enough to do it really well.
Oh yeah, but the way they do it is like the first boss, for example, they use a critical like a glitch crit thing to one hit it.
I mean, speed runs.
Oh, they'll always figure out that sort of stuff. But I think it's fine how like the bosses can be done like that. But when you're playing this for the first time, you're going to try and defeat them the way they were intended.
Yep. And some of them are pretty hard. Items like a good boss, for an example of sort of making trivial, is the first boss, the bat. You get the axe pretty much immediately before the bat boss, which is perfect for the angle that the bat comes at you.
Yeah, the game makes sure to give that to you just before that boss.
So you realise pretty soon that the whip is not the way to go in that boss, just because your angle of attack isn't capable of taking care of that boss. So you end up relying on the axe, which has like an overarching attack. So the fact that the bat's above you, you can sort of attack it. So I think that's pretty cool. With the limited resources of the NES, having those different types of fights is really interesting, I think.
Yep. So what do you think of the graphics in this game?
I'm torn up about the graphics, actually. I remembered it being very, very nice to look at. Playing through it recently with you, not so much. There is some really, really bad palette choices. Some of them are fine and passable.
I would say most of the palette choices are horrible in this game.
Most, yeah. Like, as soon as they use those really glary oranges and pinks, that's when it looks really bad.
Yeah. And for some reason, the colours that they pick make the game look blurry to me. I don't know if that's you as well, but
I think that's a limited thing. The colour palette is bad, but I think the overall look of the game, like the actual backgrounds and stuff, are really good and really thematic.
Yeah, the background was definitely good.
Yeah, but some of the palette choices are definitely very odd. And the fact that the way palettes work, Simon's always brown and orange and yellow, so they basically have to incorporate that into every level in some sense or another.
So it doesn't smother him.
Yeah.
Well, most of the backgrounds are either grey or black.
Yeah.
So it's...
Yeah.
Unless some of the ones up on the rampart are like a blue or something.
Yeah.
Like that, but at least none of them really hurt that you're losing where Simon is.
Yeah, nothing... There's definitely that in its favour, is that you never lose him amongst the mess. And yeah, it's pretty clean. It's just unappealing, a lot of it, when they use those glary pinks. There's one level in particular we actually talked about in our playthrough that was just disgusting. It looked so bad, it looked wrong.
Yeah.
And again, it's not the sprite problem. It's purely based on the palette. The colour choice was just horrendous.
Yeah, if they had just had like grey bricks with a black background or something like that, the level would have looked fine.
Like, sure, it might have looked more samey, but
yeah. I'm guessing that's why they did it, is so the levels, because it's all just you're in a castle.
Yeah. There's a limited
try
amount.
to differentiate the things, and it does not turn out very well.
Yeah. That being said, background, like ambient background images, like the forest going out into the distance and the tower in the distance in the background, I honestly think look amazing, especially for NES. Like, really good at capturing the atmosphere and the theme of the game.
I think that is the strength when it comes to graphics for Castlevania, is definitely the backgrounds. The backgrounds look very nice in this game. And they're not distracting.
No.
The backgrounds, even though there is quite a fair bit of detail.
Yeah, the game does a very good job of having a good separation between artifacts in the game and the background as well. There's a good separation when nothing really gets lost in the mix of those two things. What about boss sprites and character sprites, that sort of thing?
The sprites, they're fine.
Yep.
I don't think they're anything special.
Are you talking smack about my flea man? I'll fight you, sir. He is my favourite.
So aside from the flea man, they're okay.
Yeah,
they're okay. I can't really say much more than that when it comes to the sprites. I don't think they're anything that they do the job.
I will disagree on one small thing. I really like the boss sprites for the most part.
Yeah.
For the most part. Maybe not the final boss. Both forms are a bit
Especially his second form.
It's just dumb.
Yeah. His first form is okay.
It's okay.
But yeah, his second form looks stupid.
Dude in a cake. Like...
That's what you
try and make
expect
it hard,
Dracula to
yeah.
be, or the Count.
And then he turns into basically the monster.
It's like a gargoyle or something like that.
It's rather uninteresting.
Yeah.
Some Resident Evil boss stuff where it's like, hey, I have this cool boss. Now he's ridiculous and all deformed.
Yeah.
How interesting. Audio. I'll let you talk about the audio because
Well, I had already heard the soundtrack many a time, mostly because of Smash Bros. has a bit of the Castlevania audio, but I've heard it in other places before. The music for this game is very good.
Yeah, there's a reason that it's in so much stuff.
Yeah,
it's replicated in Smash Brothers and that sort of thing. It is honestly a classic soundtrack for the NES.
Yeah,
one of the best.
Yep, I definitely agree with that. One of the best.
The music is just like, honestly, in my opinion, 10 out of 10. There is one instance when the music does not live up to the hype and the atmosphere.
And that is the final boss.
Final boss music.
Isn't your final boss music meant to be like the best music?
The most epic, like, culmination of the whole game leading to this point.
And it's so not unmemorable. Like, even as you're there playing against the final boss, you've sort of tuned it out because it's that bad. It's got a very short loop.
Yep.
And
it's just uninteresting.
It's
just, there's no positives to it, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, there's one positive. It doesn't get in the way. It's so unassuming
it doesn't
that
distract you from the final fight.
It's just nothing. It's basically not there. Very bad final song, but don't let that detract from the rest of the soundtrack.
Yeah, the rest of the soundtrack is phenomenal.
Astounding.
As for the item sounds, they're not there.
They're just really. There's not a lot going on. The whip noise is awesome when you hit enemies, and even when you're swiping in the air and stuff, it's really cool. But using items, apart from smashing the holy water or firebomb, as it says in the manual, that sounds fine. But everything else is just, I don't even remember it.
A lot of the sounds in this game are not memorable at all. Well, there's so few of them to start.
Yeah.
And I guess because of the slow pacing of the game as well, it makes it feel like there's less sounds than there actually is.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, other than that, there's like not a whole lot to the actual sound effects of the game.
Yeah.
Apart from, like I said before, the whip against bosses, you can generally tell whether you're doing damage or not based on the whip sound, or whether your attack is really effective. That's not super clear a lot of the time either, because there's some bosses that make that noise but you're still doing damage.
Yeah.
My assumption is that you're doing less damage than you would do if you hit another part of their body or a timing. But for the most part, it seems to work okay and is rather satisfying.
That's just about it. So overall, would you recommend this game?
Absolutely. I might be a little bit biased. I don't have nostalgia as such for this game because I never played it when I was a kid or anything like that. I've only played it within the last 5 years or whatever. But I love this game. I still love this game. There is frustrating parts of it. There's frustrating game design choices. Terrible end boss sound effect, music, I should say. But overall, I think the game is amazing and just a really good experience, especially if you like that horror aspect. It's not a horror game, but if you like...
It's got a good atmosphere, for sure.
Yeah. What about you, Nathan? What do you think about it?
When we first started playing it, I didn't like it that much, but over time, I agree. I think it's a classic. It's an NES classic. It does a pretty good job of how a slow-paced like platformer can work.
Yep.
And yeah, it's certainly not one of my favorite games on the NES, but yeah, I'd probably play through it again just for the hell of it at some point.
There's a few sequels to play as well, so
yeah, that we'll probably get through at some point.
I'm looking forward to 3. Simon's Quest? Not so much. We've mentioned it before, but nah. Not a fan. Alrighty. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.